Hi, I'm Christina Pan. Welcome to my LinkedIn podcast. I'm an executive coach and I specialize in helping CEOs, founders, and senior executives get strategic clarity and confidence in your journey pioneering where there is no precedent. We strategically leverage your zone of genius for your next 10x. I'll be doing this podcast series on Wednesday, today, and next week as well at 4:30 p.m. Pacific for about 15 to 20 minutes. And we'll open a Q&A for 5 minutes at the end if I see any questions in the comments. So feel free to post questions in the comments along the way. 2 outcomes for this podcast series. 1, I want to spark your mind with non-obvious insights on relatable obstacles that block leaders who are leading the next stage of AI innovation and growth, pioneering where there are no precedents. And 2, if this resonates with you, I invite you to explore partnering with me in an executive coaching journey to be higher leverage with your zone of genius and unlock your greatest potential. So today, I want to spark your mind on impossible goals and identity shifts to break out of limiting beliefs holding back your greatest potential. Jensen Huang was on Joe Rogan's podcast recently. Yes, I know I talk about Jensen every week, and it's because he dropped so many gems that are inspiring my LinkedIn lives, including this week's topic. And there was one point in the podcast where Jensen said, "We had a mission statement for a company that has no chance of success, but I didn't know that in 1993. He was talking about impossible goals for NVIDIA. He said, NVIDIA started with a business plan and a mission statement that was impossible. And so that sparked my mind on wanting to talk about impossible goals today. I want to talk about using impossible goals as a tool to break you out beyond where you are today and, the limiting beliefs, whether from yourself and or other people, that might be capping you from the massive outcomes you are capable of. And actually, this includes massive outcomes and impacts that you might not know you're capable of in your zone of genius. And so the first non-obvious insight I want to talk about today is we often don't make space for using impossible goals as a tool to stretch ourselves personally. And I say this because we might use impossible goals to stretch our company goals, like in company strategy and planning. But I want to ask, how many of you have used impossible goals to stretch yourself personally? I'd love to hear in the comments. One of my clients said this was highly valuable for him. And I'll give an example in a minute. But first, let me give an example of what it means to use impossible goals, like on the company side. So using impossible goals for a company might look like, okay, right now we're a $1 billion company. A 2x goal is let's drive towards $2 billion. Okay, maybe at our current growth rate, that'll take 2 or 3 years, given what we're currently doing. Using a 10x goal as a tool for your company might look like, so then what do we have to change about what we're doing currently to be a $10 billion company? To go from that $1 billion company we are today to a $10 billion company. These are the kinds of questions you would ask to use a 10x goal or like a seemingly impossible goal as a tool to get clarity on what you and your company and your team needs to be doing differently. So, okay, I want to go back to my client example on how this applies to you in the personal context. Because one tool I use with my clients is impossible goals as a tool, again, to stretch you to think even bigger for yourself. So an example would be, let's say you're an executive or CEO at a $1 billion company currently, like one of my clients. And I would ask you what your 10x goal would be, your dream job. And let's say you give me your 100x goal instead, like my client did. He skipped the whole 10x. He went straight to 100x. he wants to be a CEO of $100 billion public company, with aligned values that resonate with him, where he can have a massive impact on a much, much bigger scale. And so then the question would be, who do you have to be to operate as the $100 billion CEO version of yourself? This is just, giving you one quick example. We don't have time to, actually unpack and deep dive into an exercise example like this, but I just wanted to spark your mind on something that could be highly valuable for you too, because I find many people don't make the space, as I said, to stretch themselves personally and really use impossible goals as a tool in that context. And this matters because a second non-obvious insight is you are undergoing an important identity shift and personal transformation when you're pioneering where there is no precedent. When you're building something from the ground up, or you're leading AI native transformation at your company, like this particular client. This is how we get to the most extraordinary version of you, by using impossible goals to stretch you to think bigger and shift your identity faster, so that you start being that future version of yourself and operating differently than what got you to where you are today. I love that quote. What got us here isn't what's going to get us there. And so, like in this example I'm talking about, when you start externalizing your aspirations, your crazy dreams, which is what we do in executive coaching with my clients, then your brain starts thinking it's possible. Maybe it's not that crazy. The more you talk about it, the more you normalize it and, externalize with a sounding board on the shifts you need to make this happen. This includes identifying obstacles or limiting beliefs that are keeping you in that 2x mindset, instead of 10x or 100x mindset. And you start making higher leverage decisions with your zone of genius when you, know your zone of genius and strategically figure out how you want to leverage your zone of genius. And then 2, when you have these thoughts percolating in your mind and you're externalizing and strategizing about it in executive coaching, this will automatically start shifting your perspective and helping you make higher leverage decisions. So, for example, you start thinking and deciding from the place of, okay, what would $100 billion CEO me do in this situation? How would $100 billion CEO me use my zone of genius differently than what I'm doing today? What bets would we take for our company? What would I stop doing? What would I start doing? You're doing all this through the lens of like $100 billion CEO you. Like in this example, leveraging my client example, maybe your 10x or 100x is not $100 billion CEO, maybe something else, and that's totally fine. But once you start shifting your identity and you recognize the things that are getting in the way of unlocking you from your, that next version of you and your greatest potential, you start thinking differently. Like, who do I surround myself with to get to that? Who do I need on my personal board of advisors? You might not know what $100 billion CEO thinks about every day or how they operate. So we don't do this in a vacuum by yourself. You go and find the people who can help you get clarity and get those answers from their own experiences. And so related to this, a third non-obvious insight I want to share with you today is have someone in your life who pushes you to think bigger. One of my clients said, Christina, I credit you with one thing. Every time I would come back with a small statement, you'd ask me why it wasn't larger. And this client already has a highly, highly ambitious vision and mission in AI for humanity. And so, everyone needs someone in their life who pushes you to think bigger. I personally love being that person for my clients. And it comes naturally for me because it's in my zone of genius. Like talking about zone of genius, I'm a maximizer and activator in Clifton Strengths, which means it's easy for me to see your natural highest gifts and your potential. And also, the activator part of me, a maximizer, loves to nudge and stretch people to think even bigger. Even if you're Jensen Huang or Elon Musk, there is a version of you that could think bigger. I'm also an arranger in my Clifton Strengths, which means I'm an optimizer. So that's why I personally am always focused on whatever is highest leverage for you in that moment and in life that would help, unblock you or get you an unlock that moves you more towards your greatest potential. And so maybe you're thinking, I don't have someone in my life pushing me to think bigger. No problem. A lot of us don't grow up with that, or we don't have that, in our circles. This is fully within your control. Get yourself an executive coach. And I also say this because I personally know the power of having someone or multiple someones in your life pushing you to think bigger, because I do this for myself too. I look for coaches and people on my personal board of advisors who push me to think bigger in my own journey. And, this journey has a lot of crazy highs and lows. So it is the way we can evolve our identity faster is to have those people in our lives who push us to think bigger. Also, I wanted to mention on the idea of using impossible goals as a tool. I got that from a book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, who wrote a book called 10x is easier than 2x, and highly recommend that book. It has influenced my coaching significantly. And I also wrote an article on Medium about how I apply these principles in my executive coaching, personalized to you, so that we can bridge the gap faster to your clarity and confidence using your zone of genius. And so that is my unique take on their 10x is easier than 2x, impossible goals as a tool framework. Is I bring in what I found missing was that they didn't really have a concrete way of applying the zone of genius concept to help you bridge the gap to get clarity and confidence in your path faster. And so check those out. I will put the link in the comments or show notes as well. And the last thing I want to spark your mind on is reframing for energy management. It's related also to stretching you to think bigger. And you could think of this as a quick reframing to boost your mental and emotional energy when you're at a low. And it's a quote from Beyonce. I don't like to gamble, but if there's one thing I'm willing to bet on, it's myself. Yes, that quote is from Beyonce. I love it. I've said it multiple times before in past content as well. And it comes in handy as a mantra in times when new limiting beliefs creep in, and they're going to come in at every new level in our journey, because we will always encounter new challenges, and you will start doubting yourself again. So in those moments, I want you to remember and say this to yourself. I don't like to gamble, but if there's one thing I'm willing to bet on, it's myself. Thank you. Shout out to Beyonce. I love that quote. So how about you? Are you using your zone of genius for your highest leverage and greatest potential? Do you want to shed your 2x identity or your past self and all the things from the past that got you to where you are today, but they're not going to get you to where you want to go. And get clarity and conviction in your next 10x or 100x so that we can unblock you to be the most extraordinary version of you. The next step, if this is you, is I invite you to reach out or book a call on my LinkedIn. I specialize in helping CEOs, founders, and senior executives get strategic clarity and conviction in your journey leading AI transformation and innovation by using your zone of genius for higher leverage and to shift to your 100x identity faster. I'm an executive coach and former product leader with 20 plus years experience in Silicon Valley startups and high growth companies. I started my career on Wall Street, MIT Sloan MBA, avid pickleball player, and my top gift is Zone of Genius Maximizer. My zone of genius is maximizing your zone of genius. Let me check if I have any comments. I don't see any questions, but feel free to post questions in the comments and I will answer them. And wishing you your best energy and highest leverage in your zone of genius. Thanks, everyone.